All right, climbing the window. We've got a big old show here as we get ready to strap up and ride that rocket down to Daytona. We also need to review what happened in New Hampshire, some rain racing, and how NASCAR managed that with Ryan Blaney's big win. The implications at the back of the chase standings, where all of our eyes will be this weekend. We're going to talk about another big silly season domino, maybe one of the final ones to fall, at least foreseen. And we're going to look at what happened in D.C. with our sister IndyCar series and what those ratings did in comparison to NASCAR here on the 5 to Go podcast. Up in your screen, up in your ears, like we do. Episode 378. I'm your co-host, Doug Fireball Turnbull, for the traffic team at 11 Live News. Rachel Cox-Rosen. Honored to be on with that every single morning and on with you all each week right here. I've also got the AJC Weekly Gridlock Guy traffic column here in Atlanta. And I'm honored to be here. Like I said, part of the announcing team at Performance Racing Network. PRN team was in New Hampshire and had some fun calling that race, especially those wet, rainy opening laps and so on and so forth. And while Ryan Blaney, the stat sheet says, dominated the event, it was certainly in challenge toward the end there, especially on that last run with Bubba Wallace, who finished in the second spot, and a guy who's caught fire lately, Josh Berry. We'll talk more about him in a moment, especially after some silly season news just congealed. All right, joining us on the show, what are we dripped up in, Dev, today? What do we have on the shirt?
We got the Coke Zero Sugar 400 shirt from last year, the race, one of the last Daytona races I attended, so we're getting ready for that this weekend. Not going to be there, unfortunately, this year, but I'm doing well. But yeah, the best part about today, before my next 2 days off, is that it's National Baked Potato Day. And
it is. Oh.
I now can add baked potato to my very limited cooking skills that I have. That I can make mac and cheese and I can make spaghetti at home, but now I can make baked potatoes.
You can make do you bake them or microwave them?
I microwaved last week and I baked my first one earlier today before the show.
Hey Dan, where's the where's your little hands there?
Let's hear it for the spud.
Let's hear. He is Devin Kupka. Hashtag hire Devin Kupka, UNG alum, our roving racing journo there. And there it is. There it is, our handgun. That's a handgun. We do handguns on the 5 to Go podcast. But Devin Kupka, who is joining us with that. And Devin, you cracked me up. You said last year's Daytona race, one of the last Daytona races I went to. Because there's only been one race weekend since then.
Oh, yeah, the 500.
Which you went to.
Yes.
So... That's just
See, I've been to the last 2 Daytona races, but the streak ends.
The streak ends. One of the last, yes. And I was also at the last one, too, as you would say. Yeah, now that's cool, man. I haven't been to Daytona in a couple of years, man. I'm going to have to get back very soon. Joining us also on the line, a man that's been to Daytona and victorious with that famous number 9 Melling Racing team multiple times. He's our 1988 Cup Series championship mechanic, 2018 Georgia Racing Hall of Fame inductee, and the master maker of speed on those transmissions in his Dawsonville garage, Dan Elliott, besides doing the fake clapping hands. How you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Hope everybody else is as well. Just was hoping we were into the final week or weeks of what our searing temperatures, talking about baking those potatoes, I could do one out on the hood of my truck right now. And I was hoping that we'd get into some little bit calmer, cooler weather, but not just yet.
The humidity went down in Georgia for sure, but it's coming back, and so is the rain as some drops fall here in Chamblee as I record this.
We might have some bad news on the weather front. We got El Nino really cooking up in the seas right now. We don't know what weather's going to look like in the winter, but...
In the winter. Oh, we're talking about winter weather on the 5 to Go podcast. Happy August 26th.
Hey.
Baked potato and National Dog Day, everybody.
Tomorrow's news today.
Yeah. To hear that? That's the sound of everybody turning the show off right there as us talking about winter weather. Now, hey, I hope the weather cooperates this weekend. That will be factored in along with the new rules package in Daytona with, are people going to be racing the radar and hopefully being able to pull out and pass and race each other. More on that later in the show. We got to go look backwards to New Hampshire real quick. We're not going to spend the whole show recapping this, guys. But Ryan Blaney, maybe unsurprisingly, went to victory lane. Second year in a row he's won at New Hampshire. Fourth Penske win at 6 races. Blaney also won Atlanta. You had Joey Logano at North Wilkesboro, Joey Logano at Richmond just last week. And while neither has made serious ground in the points after the New Hampshire win necessarily. All right. It definitely was a big showing there and cements their momentum heading into the chase. Blaney wins the race over, I mentioned, Bubba Wallace and Josh Berry. Christopher Bell, winner 2 years ago, who's just run incredibly. I forget his track record every year at New Hampshire and how great it is. It's like lights out in the top 3 series. He was 4th. Kyle Larson, another top 5 finish. He's starting to wake up. Ty Gibbs was 6th. Denny Hamlin 7th. Tyler Reddick was 8th. 9th went to Ryan Preece. A lot of people were expected, could he overcome some of the things that have held them back and do well at one of his home tracks? And Noah Gragson, I think with his best finish of the year, finished 10th. Devin, I'll start with you, buddy. What did you think of the goings-on in New Hampshire, whether it was Blaney's win, the wet weather racing, or Carson Hocevar, Connor Zillage? I mean, there were several wrecks in this thing, so what did you think about it?
Yeah, so, it's kind of interesting. The thing with Carson Hocevar is maybe you can attribute, since he started getting with that girl back around Echo Park Speedway weekend, that performance has ticked down a bit, but anyways, I mean...
Are you asking the stat sheet or her?
Well,
okay, never mind. Okay. So.
But his performance has ticked down a bit. He has clinched a spot in the NASCAR Cup Series chase this year, so he's good to go, but his performance has been sliding, maybe not at the right time of the year. Points reset's going to help him, but, I thought that the contact with Zillage and Hocevar was quite interesting this weekend. I don't know if y'all have ever seen the videos of Zillage, of his wrecks this year. Some people claim that he's not paying attention and he just kind of adds on to wrecks. I don't know. It kind of appears that way maybe this weekend, because I don't know if it was Hocevar, but there was another wreck in the race that I saw that he got involved with, and he tagged somebody from behind too on that one. And so I don't know. Maybe something's going on with Zillage there, but the Hocevar Zillage thing was quite interesting to see this weekend.
Yeah, it really was there, and I know my shot seized up there for a second. I think my internet's gone wonky for a second. I hope y'all can hear me okay. But look, so it was weird because Hocevar said that he made a mistake when he cut down over Zillage's nose, but then later on tried to door him when they were passing each other, having a confrontation again on the track. And Zillage, maybe raced him a little closely there, but largely kept his cool, and we'll talk about Zillage here in just a moment, but it's just odd. And in fact, and they were talking about this on Door Bumper Clear, Dirty Mo Media this week. There was some belief that on the pace laps when he spun out, because they got out there, they got out of the track a little bit late because a rain shower came up right as the race started. They were testing out the track. Okay, we're going to do wet weather tires, but is it dry enough for us to go? Because they are not rain tires. And Corey LaJoie calls them sprinkle tires. It's really for a wet surface, but you still need to have good visibility, because they've learned, Charlotte Roval a few years ago and in different places, you can't have COTA 2021 is where it really went wrong, where you just couldn't see. So they've got a situation where they can race in damp conditions but not rainy, so they're trying to suss that out. And Hocevar went up and passed the pace car, gassed up and spun off of turn 4 after telling NASCAR it's okay to race. And there's some conjecture, like, did he do that on purpose? Kind of like to your point, Devin, like, what's going on that's causing this stuff? Is he just trying to get viral? Like, what's happening? And I don't know that we're ever going to get a straight answer on that until he's looking back on his career one day or the statute of limitations is passed. It's just a little strange, right, to see him do that. I don't know if y'all thought the same thing or not. But so your big takeaway, Carson Hocevar's blunders, and at a time when he was 5th in points from Indy, now 11th in points, and again the points are so close, don't look at it as he lost ground to 6 drivers. It's more, why did he suddenly start messing up and running outside of the top 15 or 20? Dan, what about you? Besides Blaney winning, I know you had some observations from another young driver whose name begins with C.
Yeah, but from the get-go, I think for me was the fact that the difference in the grooves that people chose to run at the first laps, the first onset with the different tire, the different grooves that they ran was unbelievable. And anybody that tried to get onto the darker patch part of the surface in the middle of the track, they did not fare so well at all. But between that and then once they got on the race tire and the track got really good and dry was having the pit stops and the mistakes again on pit road, because we saw numerous mistakes on pit road. Even Blaney overcame his mistake on pit road that the pit crew made and won the race, obviously. But the fact that the 24 car, Byron lost a tire in the race, and I think I read where he's going to get penalized, or did get penalized for that as well.
Yeah,
So,
you lose
you know,
two crew members for 2 races because the wheel came off, even though it came off well after the pit stop.
Yeah, but that's an oxymoron, because probably those 2 weren't even on the plane when it went home after the race, because they were probably left at the racetrack and had to Uber home. But it's one of those things where I know things happen, but as we said, the pressure cooker has been turned up immensely in the last 3, 4, 5 races. And Daytona, this is the race that I really can't wait to get into and see this one kind of laid back, turn the volume down, and kind of look at things that I see that go on that maybe the things that people report may not, but it's the things I see. But pit road being the big deal, obviously, I guess because of work there. But then my take through the race was Josh Berry, which we're going to talk about, and then I thought Bubba ran a pretty good race out of that deal. And for the fans that like him or don't like him, he ran a pretty good race, and thought he might be able to make some ground on Blaney there at the last, but it wasn't meant to be. And I think Blaney was playing a bit anyway. And it's one of those things where I might be able to catch you, but beyond that, I'm not going to be able to do anything once I catch you.
Yeah.
Except just watch you in the windshield. So. Given that, and the fact that Blaney is still so strong, you know, the comment was made, was he peaking too early? And that's yet to be seen. But you know, I look for them, and we'll talk about Daytona, but I look for them again to be Logano and Blaney to run well at Daytona.
It's been interesting with the Penske cars. The rub on them for recent super speedway races has been runs well, gets stage points, doesn't finish well. But that said, Austin Cindric won Talladega last year, and he's the one that needs to run well better than all. But you know, in fact, they need to line up if they're doing the strategy the way you think they might at Penske. Unless they get caught in line and can't pass, they're probably going to be pushing the 2 car and making sure he gets as many stage points as possible. Looking back at the standings, he has a 44-point lead over 17th place Ryan Preece, Cindric 15th at the standings. Shane Van Gisbergen, 31-point buffer to the good there at the back of the chase standings. And really, Ryan Preece only has a shot to catch him. Brad Keselowski needs murderous good luck to happen to him, and bad luck to the 3 drivers there, you know, or 2 of the 3 drivers in front of him to be able to leapfrog over him and get all the points, you know, have almost a perfect day. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what you said. You know, do Blaney and Logano keep it up, or do they hit their groundswell early? The deal is Blaney is not a whole lot different than Denny Hamlin in the sense that he's been carrying it all season. There have been times, look, not just running up front necessarily, but grinding out finishes, even with his pit crew, who has lost him a triple-digit amount of spots on pit road this year. Blaney has still carried the Penske flag. Only recently has Logano caught up. Blaney has the second most laps led this year, 823 to Denny Hamlin's 880. He has got the most stage points, in other words, points from finishing positions in stages 1 or 2 out of the whole Cup Series this year. He has 2 more than Ty Gibbs. And Ty Gibbs has 3 more than Denny Hamlin. How about that? I wouldn't have guessed that Denny Hamlin would have less stage points than Ty Gibbs this year. Maybe we should pay more attention to that. And Blaney's tied for the most top 10s this year with 17 with Hamlin. I feel like had very similar seasons, just a 77-point difference, only a 1-win difference between the two, plus Hamlin's all-star win. We mentioned, too, in our extensive pre-show production meeting, that Connor Zilic had a strange incident. So there was the rub with Carson Hocevar, but that wasn't the part that really had you scratch your head. It's when Riley Herbst had a fierce crash into the outside wall that honestly looked very similar, I'm sorry to say, but to the Kenny Irwin and Adam Petty wrecks of the year 2000 that were unfortunately fatal. It was a scary wreck that took and I didn't see it live, but looking at replays, that took the breath of the people calling it. And he kind of finished crashing, and then Connor Zilisch had his wheels locked up and just piled right into it after, which that's the worst kind of result, is when you have a compromised race car and then another car hits it. Dan, that caught your eye, just as in the what the heck, right?
Yeah, it's almost as if Connor was thinking he was in a legend car, and I can get in there, I can squeeze through there, I can do it. No, I can't. And it just came down to that quick.
Yeah.
So a judgment call for sure, but an expensive judgment call. And this has got to be one that you sit back as the new Hendrick driver and you scratch your head on what's going through his head. So, but I know those mistakes are going to happen. I know they are. And I'd rather do them now and get them out of the way than do it later. But still, those mistakes are very costly. It makes you look extremely bad. I don't care how good a driver you are, makes you look extremely bad, and comes at a time to where that he really does need some good solid finishes.
He does, and he looked like he was starting to trend that way. After Richmond, right? It just seemed like it's one step forward, two steps back for Zilisch there. It looked to me like he was thinking that once Herbst hit the wall, he was going to clear down and he'd be able to squeeze through. And he committed up top, and there was trash and marbles, all the stuff they call, and just couldn't steer up there. But that was tough. Devin, I want to ask you real quick. I don't want to spit forever because, there's been enough said about Zilisch in the negative, and we know he's going to profile to probably be a really great driver of the Cup Series. What did you think about his response on the radio, which is just basically, I'm effing terrible? That's an emotional thing in the moment. Does he really think he's so terrible? But you got to think the psychological toll of just constantly, almost literally hitting a wall has got to be tough.
Yeah, it's tough, and especially with, all the factors that are surrounding him and his team this year. It's kind of tough for him. His confidence is probably shot a little bit, but it's an adjustment getting into this Generation 8 car. We haven't seen too many people succeed in year one or year two, unless you're Corey Heim. But outside of that, really haven't seen too much success. Look how long it took Ty Gibbs to really get a foot underneath him, get some feeding underneath him and all that. And now look, he's a two-time winner this year in the Cup Series. So I think it's just, getting adjusted to the car and also the organization you're with as well, where they're at as well.
Yeah, and I don't think I think it's been easy to gang up on Trackhouse, and they haven't run well. But gosh, it's not like they're getting treated like a C-level team. Oh, this horrible Trackhouse. It's like, gosh, you could be great and still running 24th because, or great in terms of functionality and well-funded. They have all of that. And just a couple of years ago, they were the toast of everybody. And I think it'd be easy to turn on all of a sudden it's like, oh, when are the next two drivers going to leave and the contracts and all this stuff? It's like, hold on, is the whole house falling down because one driver is leaving to go to Hendrick and they've had a couple of bad years? I don't know, but it doesn't take much either, right, in this cutthroat business. So we won't pile on too much more there, but that was a tough look from Zilisch. And the one good thing they've done, so first off, this comment's been made too. I think Denny Hamlin said it, but others have too. Hendrick Motorsports has played this great. Let another team develop them, sign them up. Denny Hamlin's had to develop Corey Heim, right? Michael Jordan's had to develop Corey Heim on their own. Hendrick just lets Trackhouse be the incubator and say with crew members and stuff, come on up, come on back. All right, we got you. But another great thing that Trackhouse has done is still having that lifeline to Junior Motorsports to allow all three of its drivers to go somewhere where they know they can run up front and great equipment in the O'Reilly Series and not forget that they're great drivers. And I think that's important and probably something that some others are going to need to remember as well. We'll get to that in just a moment there as we talk a little bit more about silly season. With the point standings, like I said, it really comes down to Preece and Keselowski on the outside. The others have been eliminated behind them on the inside. It's really Cindric and Shane Van Gisbergen. Looking ahead of them, Bubba Wallace, 370. I think, yeah, he's in pretty good shape. So really, it's it's nice to know that we're going to Daytona and we can focus on certain drivers and not have somebody in 29th place in the points come and win and knock SVG out, right? It seems like a little more legit, as exciting as seeing Harrison Burton win was, or Austin Dillon 2 years ago, or whichever, or several years ago. Let's move on then. And I want to ask one more thing about the race: wet weather tires and NASCAR throwing competition cautions and mandating the race you start with these tires, mandating you change them at this time, and giving people a window to when they kind of have to do it instead of letting the teams call it themselves. And I'm not trying to skip over you, Devin, but Dan has run a racetrack and has been on a pit crew, been almost hit by race cars on pit road and things like that. I mean, Dan, now that we've gotten about 5 different seasons of racing in on treaded tires, do you think that maybe NASCAR could open the playbook a little bit more for these teams and let them decide on their own? Because it seemed like that was going to be a real game of cat and mouse, as how long you decided to stay on those treaded tires as the track dried out.
I think this is one of those things where, just like the decision that Zillich made to go high instead of going low, I think this is one of those decisions that if NASCAR turned it over to the competitors would be I think it would be a serious mistake up front, only from the side of, if you open the door on this and let the competitors change when they want to, you're going to have a small group that will choose to change tires to try to get an advantage, even though it might not be safe yet to change the tire. And then NASCAR saddled with a barrage of caution flags, caution laps that you don't need up front, and the fact that you're probably going to tear up several cars before you determine that, no, the track's not dry enough yet, we can't do this yet, and or it may be a race runaway where one team makes the right calls and then it is a runaway for that driver that you won't really have a good race from a fan's perspective, because it'll be 1 or 2 cars that leave the rest of the field, and the advantage would be so great you'd never be able to have a competitive race to bring all the field really back together again.
So it's really not. It may be a safety thing, but it's maybe the NASCAR's calling that playbook to keep it so they're in the same box, basically.
I think it's both. I think if you turned it loose, the fact that you would be in a position to tear up a bunch of race cars before the track really got dry enough to run these tires. But me as a driver, I'd say, let me gamble. Put the good tires on. I'm going to gamble on it and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And we've seen that before in years past where NASCAR, it starts to rain and they either most time didn't throw a caution right off when they should have, and a lot of cars in the field were taken out for the wrecks thereof.
Well, in Daytona 2021, I think, of the summer race, if I'm not mistaken, there's a 22. But the one with the Austin Dillon one where the field crashed in turn 1. But that wasn't a case of switching to wet tires. That was just them not throwing the yellow in time for rain. Yeah, I'm talking more as the track is drying out, they're determining you have to start here, you have to change. They didn't even make it competitive pit stops. They didn't even give it. They just let everybody stop and change tires. I thought, this is the Cup. This ain't ARCA. Like this is the Cup Series, man. It seemed like a little much for me. Devin, any other perspective on that? You as a fan, or as an analyst, what you'd want to see?
I didn't get to catch the race live on Sunday. Although the only live part I did catch was when Michael McDowell spun on the pace lap, and that was
Carson
like, all right,
Hocevar.
they're probably not ready to get going here, and I thought that was really interesting, but with me not being able to catch the race, I don't know how they necessarily handled it. Saw the highlights, looked like it was decent racing to begin. So I don't know how they handled that on Sunday precisely, but I do remember Watkins Glen a few years ago when it was raining, rain tires. They said, nope, we're not running it in the rain at all, and they didn't run it there. So I do not really have a comment to offer here.
Yeah, there was in 22 at Watkins Glen. Maybe you're thinking of a different one. They did run in the rain. They didn't run when it was raining, but they definitely ran in the wet on that one. And it was really interesting to see the dynamics. I remember Charlotte, the Roval in 2020. So they had the big washout of the Xfinity race. It was crazy. I got soaking wet during that. And then the next day at Cup, it was a game of cat and mouse. When did you switch to dry tires? Because there was a point once you start running the treaded tires on dry pavement, it chews them up. And you got to make that decision quickly. But if you switch to slicks too early, then you have no grip in the wet parts of the track. I mean, it's really interesting to see them play that out. So
bring back the rain races from 2021 and 2020. Coda,
I mean, I'm not totally opposed, but they got to work on the visibility, and I think they decided that wasn't as doable in these cars, although other series seem to figure out how to do it. But nonetheless, those are also usually on road courses and not on ovals. But and one thing I want to clean up from what I said before: the only driver that I didn't mention that's not locked into the chase is Bubba Wallace. All right, so Wallace is 71 to 46. He's like plus 75 to the cut line. So everything would have to go against him at Daytona for that to allow Ryan Preece-in and Bubba Wallace out, basically. But I just wanted to clean that up. All right, a couple of items from this week. Okay, I'm going to start with Sunday. We're going to get to silly season. Sunday, we didn't really preview it all, but the Freedom 250 IndyCar race, which really came together, long story short, by executive order for the White House after the Penske Corporation, Bud Denker from Penske was lobbying around Washington. We'd love to do a race here. Congress couldn't figure it out. The White House signed an executive order. Even with the assistance of the government, IndyCar had to pay a reported like $35 million and get hundreds of pages worth of permits to be able to do what they did on the National Mall. But what it netted them was a once-of-a-kind event on America's 250th birthday year. And the president was there, all right? The president had been to a NASCAR race in a couple of years, right? President Trump was there. A lot of other dignitaries were there. Kyle Kirkwood dominated the thing. Several drivers crashed. There was a lot of excitement, with that. And IndyCar had its highest-rated non-Indy 500 event in 18 years, per Jeff Gluck of The Athletic. They had over 3 million people watch that race. This race would have ranked 5th in the Cup Series season if it had been a NASCAR race. They definitely outpaced NASCAR, which had just about 2 million watching New Hampshire Motor Speedway. They had overlap in the time slots, too, whereas IndyCar's race the end of it was running into the beginning of NASCAR's. Devin, what did you think about Indy's trip to D.C., which more than likely will not happen again? Never say never. But what did you think about that whole endeavor from how it came about really quickly? They didn't even have a course designed. 7 or 8 months later, they ripped a long IndyCar street race.
Yeah, I think it was a really good idea for IndyCar to go out, try something brand new that was going to be like an in-your-face thing. For them to try that out, it was really cool to see that, and it paid off big time for them. And maybe this is a signal of things. Maybe Americans like street racing, and maybe that's something IndyCar and NASCAR need to pursue a little bit more, is more of the street course racing. I mean, think about when NASCAR went to the Chicago street course back in 2023. That was the first race since Homestead in the mid-2010s that got over 4.5 million viewers for a race.
Wow.
After the Coke 600 portion of the schedule.
Right.
So you think about that, look, maybe that's what Americans want to see in racing. Maybe both these leagues need to invest more into it.
And could be a case made, although a lot of IndyCar fans say there are already too many street courses in that series. But in NASCAR, that's a way to shake it up. The way NASCAR has been able to go to different venues is by doing street courses. The only other racetrack venue, so to speak, I mean, but the Mexico Circuit Hermanos, that was a whole different deal. But I mean, he was building the one inside the LA Coliseum. Really, they've added a couple other racetracks. It's really been, how can we take this circus elsewhere? By the way, the big news today, 2027 NASCAR schedule's out. The only thing that was kind of really left up in the air for the Cup Series was the San Diego Street Course race is returning, Naval Base Coronado, in 2027 on August 1st. And then, Devin, you saw the U.S. and the Department of War, we're going to call it that now, the Department of War have signed a deal to continue doing races on bases?
Yes, so they signed, NASCAR and the Department of War have signed a deal for the next couple of years to do some races on some military bases. They're going to be back at San Diego next year, and then in 2028, they're going to be at a new military base.
And that was per Adam
I think
Stern.
Adam Stern yesterday.
Sports Business Journal there. So that just to let you know, they're that at least the amount they have is continuing. And of course, the Chicago Street Course is not a closed case, but will not be on the 2027 Cup schedule there. All right, so Dan, what did you think about IndyCar being able to pull off something around the National Mall like that?
You know, there's several takeaways I think from that, and the fact that maybe from this some of the politicians see that this is a plus to their political career by putting on a race or being at a race, because racing was probably not the most prominent thing of a politician's career being associated with. And hopefully they see that it does not hurt but helps it maybe. And for racing as a whole, that's where I'm going, that this is looked at, viewed in a different light, that that's a positive. And the thing I thought was the strangest about that course at Washington was how rough it was.
Yeah.
If you saw the cars bouncing around, and there was some carnage in the race, and it wasn't just mild carnage. It was some cars really got tore up in that race. And I think it had to do with probably how rough the course was, because I'm thinking watching this that I know where I'll be tomorrow if I'm driving one of these cars. I'm going to be at the chiropractor at best getting my adjustments, because I'm going to be hurting after this, because the fans have to keep in mind how stiff, how rigid these Indy cars are.
Correct.
And this had to be brutal in the car, and the fact that trying to keep control of this car over those bumps, as serious as they were, would have been unfathomable of how you would have had to have paid attention. And it would be one of those things where you were already wrecked before you realized that, hey, that was a rough bump, and I might wreck. No, I'm already in the wreck. I am the wreck. But it was a rough course, and you know, looking at it as far as having a cup race at one of these, I can only imagine what the drivers might have said, and what the complaints may have been if they had to run a course this rough, because based on what I saw from the TV perspective, this was a tough course to run.
Seemed like, especially going over those crosswalks, was one place I remember, seeing it just go boop, like two at once. Kyle Kirkwood was your winner. Let me just buzz through some of the names there that finished well. Christian Lundgaard finished in the second spot for Arrow McLaren, lame duck driver there. Will Power finished third. Marcus Ericsson was fourth. Fifth went to Kiffin Simpson of Ganassi. Sixth was Nolan Siegel, also a lame duck driver at McLaren. Seventh went to Scott Dixon, who will be joining McLaren next year, which is kind of a huge story, by the way, leaving Ganassi after all these years, a quarter century or so. Eighth went to Joseph Newgarden, who's just been persona non grata all year. Caio Collet finished ninth, the Brazilian driver for A.J. Foyt, and 10th was Romain Grosjean, which is how I say Romain Grosjean when I have a mouthful of cheese curds from Culver's. All right, so Romain Grosjean, that's how you say and 3 of the 7 American drivers in the field did not finish the race. They crashed out or had different reasons for not finishing there, by the way, including David Malukas from Team Penske. So, but interesting to see IndyCar be able to pull that off. And also, they made it 250, I guess, miles, right? Not kilometers, because, America. All right, but 250, and that was a long IndyCar street course race. That race was close to 3 hours, I think, 2.5, 3 hours. A lot of heat. They were worried about the heat in the cars, and not to mention the topography there, the bouncing around the track, the tough tear, the wear is the word I was looking for, on people's bodies and that. These drivers telling you, looks like you could do it. Oh, they're just driving cars. I drive a car. It's a whole different ball game. Yeah, I don't know how much we should keep saying that. Maybe you know that, but it's way harder and way more told than you might expect. All right, now, that was IndyCar. Let's get a little bit off track now with a big silly season domino that I there were starting to be rumors that maybe Austin Hill wouldn't be the guy in the 33. Maybe things had stalled out a little bit. And it's funny how as soon as that rumor gains a little bit of steam, especially with Josh Berry running as well as he has lately, Suddenly, Austin Hill's announced as the driver of the 33 for next year and beyond in the Cup Series for Richard Childress Racing. The car, of course, that used to belong to Kyle Busch that Hill has been piloting for the last 3 months now. But also, RCR quickly then announces its teammates for the O'Reilly Series next year because Jesse Love is moving to the number 21 Wood Brothers machine, replacing Josh Berry. Carson Brown will be in the number 2. Chandler Smith, Georgia driver, will move from Front Row Motorsports Truck Series ride into the 21 that Hill is vacating to go full-time Cup Series racing. Devin, what did you think about, the decision with RCR to continue with Hill in the car? And do you have any opinion on what they're doing with the O'Reilly side, too, considering some of the drivers available?
Yeah, I think with when it comes to the Cup Series side of things with Austin Hill, I think that move made sense. I think next year is going to be set up for a very big silly season because we just see a bunch of drivers only signing these one-year contracts. Austin Hill being one of them, signing the one-year contract with Richard Childress Racing. So really next year is going to be the tryout year for him, and what's going to happen with him after next, we don't know. But he finally gets his shot in the NASCAR Cup Series at a full-time level, not having to worry about the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series as much. So I think it's going to be an interesting transition period for Austin Hill and Richard Childress Racing. Maybe part of it was because of the one-year deal, because of sponsorship, maybe because they had another year with what was going to be Kyle Busch, but they're probably maybe going to ride it back again with Austin Hill. We will see. We're going to have to watch his performance next year. It hasn't been all that great. And you think you'd get some continuity with him having the same crew chief the whole season. We really haven't seen a whole lot of that. But maybe that's just him getting used to the Cup car.
For sure. And look, they moved Hill's crew chief, Andy Street, into Jim Pullman's position before Kyle Busch's passing there. And suddenly Kyle Busch's performance ticked up just a little bit. Jim Pullman had won that O'Reilly championship with Justin Allgaier a couple of years ago and had done well with Allgaier since. And just it didn't click in the Cup Series for them. And Hill's with his crew chief that he had a lot of O'Reilly success with before they moved him off of the 21 car. And hopefully it gels. I think it takes a toll, too. You've got a guy that's driving a car he's not used to driving, not even filling, and he says he's not trying to fill Kyle Busch's shoes, but an impossible situation, and he's still doing double duty every single week in the O'Reilly Series running for a championship. And we can't underestimate how hard that is. Even though, we've seen people do it over the years, it's maybe harder than ever now with all the information they have. Dan, what do you think about this decision here? And do you have any opinion about them going with Chandler Smith and Carson Brown in the lower series?
I don't. I think that across the board, and don't read in the wrong meaning out of this. I want their teams to run extremely well. I have nothing against seeing Austin Hill and Childress and all of those gel and come together and become a solid competitor week in and week out. But given the place we are and where we're at right now and the results that Kyle Busch brought in, we know that there was already the team was already struggling beforehand. And I really would like to see a, so to speak, come to Jesus meeting where cars and drivers are all on the same page. Everybody comes together and says, we've got to turn this around, because I don't see it as one, I see it as both. And I think that if they work together and come together and can do that right off the get-go, but if they get into a deal where, as I've seen it so far, where the struggle is, where one faction blames the driver, one faction blames the car, and you get into the blame game, it will absolutely go nowhere, and it will self-destruct.
That's 100% true. That the best finish that Austin Hill has had, so we're not counting the races prior to Charlotte where he was at Phoenix and Martinsville. But I'm looking at the best finish is 18th. He finished 20th in Michigan, 18th at Pocono. And then it was 36, 34, 37, 31st, 37th, 31st, a pair of 33rds, 26th, 23rd, and 24th. Yeah. That's tough. That is tough. And 3 DNFs due to crashes. in those, and the mix-up with Shane Van Gisbergen right before Atlanta, right? At the Chicagoland race, that didn't do any favors either. That is tough deal. And I really thought, around the time of San Diego or so, I was like, man, okay, he's starting to turn a corner. Hearing how he won that San Diego Riley race and the way he diagnosed what was going wrong with his car, I'm like, this sounds like a Cup driver. Like, he's ready to go, and it just hasn't gone well. But also, when you're not running for a championship, who knows what you're trying on that thing? We do not know. There's always a part you don't know. All right. And I think that Richard Childress Racing wouldn't have signed Austin Hill in there if they didn't think that was the best option for them. Right.
And you have to understand that once you choose your setup for the race, once that decision is made, you have little adjustability come race day. You've made your choice on your setups. And once you get into the race, you have to make the best of what you got.
Yeah, that's a great point. With Austin Hill for sure taking that ride, which we were probably 90% expecting, that really closes up without some unforeseen tragedy or falling out, any seat in the Cup Series. All right, Rick Ware's not firing his son. The front row cars are decided for. RFK, couple or all three drivers maybe at one point had they've been decided. Even Austin Cindric, though it hasn't been formally announced that I know of, is reportedly re-signed at least for 1 year in the 2-car. And thank you, Devin, for correcting me about Austin Hill being just 1 year in the 33. But it leaves Josh Berry as where the music stopped, and without any kind of crazy unforeseen thing, doesn't have a ride. So I'm looking around. We don't really know exactly what's open in O'Reilly and who's carrying what money where and what team may appear out of nowhere. But the 38 truck, Chandler Smith is leaving. That'd be a good place for Josh Berry to hang out a year, in my opinion. But the money's got to work. And Jerry Freese said that on a recent podcast interview. I think it was with Jeff Gluck. The money's got to work. For that team. It's not just straight up talent. There's got to be, a quotient that they manage there. And then you never know what's open or not at Junior Motorsports, especially with stuff changing with Zilich in the future and everything like that. If anything, that probably puts Zilich in more Junior Motorsports equipment just because he's a Hendrick driver now. Raja Caruth looks like he's well on his way back to being in the 88. And Carson Quapple, whose future was down, looks like he's back. I've heard Sammy Smith might be on the way out from that situation. So, Sam Mayer is supposed to be returning to Junior Motorsports, right? That's the word too. I think didn't I get that right? Didn't they say that? Am I making that up? Didn't Sam Mayer say he was switching teams again, going back to Junior Motorsports?
That I hadn't heard.
Let me make sure on that. I'm going to look that up real quick. I might have just hallucinated that, but I'm pretty sure. But the point is it doesn't seem there are a lot of top-tier things available in the O'Reilly series now that Carson Brown, the prospect coming up from late models, is going to the 2-car. The 21 is going to Chandler Smith, who's coming up for the Truck Series. I mean, Devin, what do you foresee happening there? Do you think that Josh Berry gets put in the 38 truck? Does he have something? I mean, I don't know.
I think it was a little too fast to move on from Josh Berry. I think Wood Brothers made a very quick decision on that. Because he's had a lot of bad luck since the Southern 500 last year and then going into the spring of this year, and now has had really good, decent runs over the past month. But he's probably going to go back down to a lower series, whether that's the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series or the Truck Series. Then he'll probably maybe get a Cup ride again in 28. I don't foresee anything opening that would be for him in the Cup Series next year. So I don't know what his future holds for 27. But I would expect for him, he probably goes down to a lower series next year.
Seems like that's the move. And of course, Ryan Priest did a part-time thing in lower series when stuff ran out for him at JTG Daugherty, and he was able to work his way back up to Stuart Haas and replace Cole Custer and get back in the cycle again. And by the way, that's just a rumor that Sam Mayer is going back to Junior Motorsports next year. That has not been announced, but for what that's worth. So there's a lot to be decided in those lower series, but a lot of it has to do with funding there. I mean, Dan, Josh Berry's in his early to mid-30s. I think he's pushing 35, right? I mean,
yeah, and I look at this from the get-go of when he first came in and started running some of the Cup races, and I question that anyway. But it's not that I have anything against him. It's just the numbers. Everything is against you on what you're trying to do, because there are some racetracks that Josh Berry runs extremely well on, but it's not every racetrack. And the thing about it is yes, he's had bad luck this year in some races, but the thing about it is you have too much young talent coming up through the ranks that is just newly discovered talent that is going to be more desirable than Josh Berry, even though Josh Berry has experience. And like I said, I think Josh Berry's a great driver, but the facts are the facts, and what these teams are looking for in the new fresh talent, and especially if the new fresh talent brings what with them? A ton of money.
Yeah, come on, Dan, that's your word.
Okay, so given that, I think that you've got, the fact is you've got a lot of things against you, and his performance has not been able to, with whatever luck or bad luck or whatever has happened, hasn't helped you much at all.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough to look at Josh Berry and not think about the first 2/3 of the season, right? But he has turned it up. And wasn't he racing like somebody on the prowl Sunday?
He
Several
was, but you can't judge. You had two good races here, the last two races, Richmond and New Hampshire, and those are tracks that I thought he would run good on anyway, because they were more what he cut his teeth on.
Yeah, but he's run. I think I'm going to pull it up right here just to make sure and get it right. But he's had
He's
three.
had some good runs.
I think he's only the second Wood Brothers driver ever, joining Morgan Shepherd, to get 4 consecutive top 10s. Who would have thought? The second Wood. I mean, that's pretty interesting, right? That you would think, but he's had, and again, what you're saying is totally right, Dan. Short track season, he's running the same as the Penske's. All are running better. Mm-hmm. But Indianapolis, he was 7th. Then Iowa, Richmond, Loudon, which profiles similarly 4th, 8th, and 3rd. And his performance in New Hampshire was really good. You got to think that means something, and having the blessed of Dale Jr.'s got to mean something, but it doesn't necessarily turn into money. It does not turn into money. That is a fact.
And the thing about it is, it does not turn heads in the people looking at the up and coming, the talent that's coming up right now, because there's a ton of talent coming. And when we get to 2028, you're going to see this talent that's come to the top. You're going to see some of that.
Yeah. We almost forget how much there is, It's like we go whole shows that don't ever mention Brent Cruz, and like he's like the chosen one in the Toyota camp, right? Yep. But he gets overshadowed by what's up with Zillage, and we're talking a lot about Hocevar, and we're talking about Corey Day.
So many seats left. At the end of the day, there aren't enough seats.
That's just a fact. And you see some of these guys, Sheldon Creed and Sam Mayer, and guys that were on the tip of the spear, even Carson Kvapil, being just a little older. And they don't even hardly get looked at because there's just not enough seats. Hey, speaking of the O'Reilly series, they've been off for a couple of weeks. Remember, they were on a tear where they weren't off for the first half of the year, it seemed like. And now they've had 2 weeks off. Their drivers 9th through 14th in the points are still eligible, to either fall out of the top 12 or to get back into it, because this is their chase cutoff race, or regular season cutoff at Daytona. Parker Retzlaff has a 46-point lead over 13th place Taylor Gray. Sam Mayer, 19-point lead. Then you have 11th and 12th place tied. Technically, they're tied for 11th. William Sawalich gets the tiebreaker over Brent Cruz, his teammate, because William Sawalich won Rockingham. But they are tied, and they are only 1 point ahead, Dan Elliott, of their teammate Taylor Gray, who is 13th in points. So Joe Gibbs has 4 drivers full-time in the O'Reilly series. Brandon Jones is 6th in points. He's clinched. The other 3 are within 1 point of each other, and only 2 of them make it. And potentially, 2 of them could miss, too, if Raja Caruth jumps over him. How about that, Dan? How do you manage that when you're at a drafting track where you need partners and you got these aggressive young drivers, sophomore driver Swalich, sophomore driver Gray, rookie Brent Cruz, and they've all made a good number of mistakes and raced rough around each other? How are we managing that, Dano?
We go to the team meeting and say, this is where you're at. Don't wreck each other. Have a good race and may the best man win. But number one, do not wreck each other in the process of what you're trying to do.
I would say everybody's pushing Brandon Jones. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, don't wreck each other. What do you think, Devin? I mean, that's going to be some good must-see TV Friday night.
Yeah, it will be, certainly, with all the banging and action that we get from Daytona. You never know what's going to happen there.
And Raja Caruth is only 14 points behind Gray. Well, or better put, Raja Caruth, 14th in the standings, is 15 points behind Brent Cruz and Swalich tied in that cutoff position. The junior motorsports cars run well. Caruth has shown proficiency at the drafting tracks. Sign me up, boys. By the way, that's the 88 car. That's the team that won. Well, it's the number that won last year where Parker Kligerman drove in relief of Connor Zillage. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
The problem here is you got the rest of the field that want to win too. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, let's not forget about that one.
I think what's more fascinating is that it's not win to end win and you're in. Like if Ryan Sieg, 15th in points, mathematically eliminated, best I can tell anyway. I don't add good, but no, he's mathematically.
Which race do I want to win? Out of the ones that you want to win, which one do I want to win?
Well, no, that's what I mean is it's okay if if the other part of the field wins. These guys just have to beat each other. It doesn't matter who wins.
But
right? They
I
just
still want to win Daytona.
Right.
I want to win Daytona.
I agree. I'm with you.
I don't care. I'm going to bring you the steering wheel or win that race.
That's what I love about Daytona, and I just hope the weather cooperates there. Hey, real quick, a look at the weekend schedule. By the way, just let me dial that up real fast. Friday, 7:30, Daytona O'Reilly Series. Trucks are off. Trucks aren't back until Bristol, September 17th, so they get a couple of weeks before they start their chase. And then the Cup Series is also 7:30 on Saturday night. And by the way, it is so confusing now with where qualifying and everything is for everything, but. So True TV shows qualifying, which is kind of part of the TNT package, so they say TNT on the mic flags, but it's the USA Sports personalities that are doing this on TNT that's really on True TV. Got all that? But that's going to be the qualifying for the Cup Series, 5 to 6:30, qualifying only, no practice. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to why that's even a bigger thing. That'll be 5 to 6:30. Here's something interesting, guys. The purse for this year's Coke Zero 400, $11,233,000 and some change. That is up from $9.797 million last year. So NASCAR threw a little more purse money in there. Maybe that lawsuit did go okay. I haven't noticed the purses all year. I paid zero attention to that the entire year, but maybe that's part of the good fallout from that. For the O'Reilly Series, your qualifying is right before Cup, 3 to 4:30. So book out your Friday afternoon and then go right into Friday evening, 3 to 4:30, and it's qualifying only for the O'Reilly Series. Looking at O'Reilly's too, there are all sorts of people that are signed up for this one. Cesar Baccarella is in the Alpha Prime extra entry number 4. Ryan Sieg is actually moving to the 38. Who's going to be in the 39 then? Okay, I'll have to look at that. But Daniel Dye in the 32 for Jordan Anderson. Oh, and Andy Jankowiak from the ARCA Series will supplant Ryan Sieg from his own ride and drive the 39 because it's locked into the field. Some others that you may not have seen lately, Leland Honeyman will drive a DGM car, number 71. Nick Sanchez is back in the 87. He won Atlanta last year. Just announced Lee Pulliam from Short Track Racing will run full-time for Peterson Racing next year in O'Reilly. That's big. He had pretty much retired from late model racing. He comes and runs a race for Dale Jr., gets into some crashes, but has, runs up front, does well, and he will run next year full-time in O'Reilly. Mason Maggio will be in the 91, Josh Williams in the 92. So DGM has 3 different drivers there and its entries there. And for the Cup Series, will they have anything special? They'll probably have a couple extra cars. Let's see. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. Let me get to the right series. There we go. Cup Series starting lineup field. Where's it at? Joey Gase will be in the 44 for NY Racing. Casey Mears in the 62. Here we go. Gray Galding will be in the 66 for Carl Long. Corey Heim will be back in the 6-7 car, and Daniel Dye will be in the 78. So that's 4. So that's 41 drivers for 40 spots in the Cup Series there. Did y'all see that there were like 6 trucks that didn't qualify in New Hampshire? That was crazy. They had like 41 trucks show up in New Hampshire or something like that. It was something like, where did that come from? They had to do some monkeying around. Frankie Muniz gave up his ride for Tommy Baldwin's son Luke to drive because they were teammates, and then he crashed on lap 1 and got wrecked out. So that was tough. But at Daytona, rule change, shorter spoiler, I think from 7 inches to 4. They've choked down the horsepower. The idea is in single-car runs, they're supposed to go 3 miles per hour faster, so that could maybe multiply when you're being drafted. Devin, what are we thinking? No practice? New package? Man.
If NASCAR could have their way, they wouldn't even do qualifying. They would just do everything by the metric every week, one-day shows. But I don't know. I don't think NASCAR really wants practice anymore. I just
Even though they added it at New Hampshire.
I know they added it, but maybe that tune will change soon for the drafting tracks. But yeah, interesting they don't have practice. We're only going to find out on Sunday, on Saturday night. Get Maximum Chaos maybe. Maybe we'll get back to the way it was back in 2019 through 2021. I don't know. I don't know why they didn't add practice. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but maybe NASCAR had a reason why not to.
And maybe they could have added single car just to shake down the car. Make sure it's not out of freaking control when you go qualifying. Remember Daytona a few years ago when Connor Daly went out to drive the number 50, which is, a back marker, part-time team, and it was pogoing up the track. It was bouncing up and down. First time he'd driven it. They had Travis Pastrana testing the 67 car in a parking lot to make sure he knew how to shift. It's like, come on, we could have just had a little practice. But yeah, that was the Daytona 500. That was after qualifying. They do have some practice. Dan, what do you think, man? What do you think about this? Where they're trying to make it so these cars pass more, so it's not just a fuel mileage affair because they've been stuck in line. Is this going to make a difference, or are we still going to see the fuel saving, or both?
Well, obviously, we don't know that. We don't know what they know as far as what they've seen by cutting that much. That's a substantial amount off the spoiler.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
That's substantial. Okay, so given that fact, I would probably have some kind of practice where cars could go out in groups of 3. I would do 3, 3, 3, and 3 on the track at one time, not to where they run each other down, but where there's separation, to where that gives them an opportunity to see what the cars feel like with just 3 cars.
Yeah.
And if you don't like what you feel, you can back off and separate yourself and be one car and have a little bit of practice. That to me would be the smart thing to do, because going out there cold turkey, because like I said, you talk about making you draw up in a knot. Take 3 inches off the spoiler of a car that needs that downforce to run, and I guarantee you these cars have got to be different, but I don't know what they know from the wind tunnel and the testing that they've done. So obviously they have a plan on how they're going to attack this, but I would hate to get into a group of cars knowing that much spoiler was gone and trying to keep the car under me.
And according to the press release they sent out July 15th, it's a 4-inch spoiler down from 7 inches. There's a few other, the tapered spacer is going to change to make it have about 465 horsepower down from 530 or 550 or so. But here's what they estimate from performance aspects based on their testing before any team engineers gotten a hold of this. All right. Single car speeds estimated 2 to 3 miles per hour faster than in current qualifying, which is, again, single car. The maximum pack speeds are estimated to be the same. So the hope is that what their models have shown is a completion of a pass with a 5 mile per hour run is more likely with the new package. That you're able to pull out of line and have a little more gusto behind you instead of hitting the big parachute because of that big spoiler in the air. Now, but what's interesting is with these cars, the way they engineer them is instead of, we think about like the Gen 4 car from the Twisted Sister era where it was all about looking like a bulldog, as Darrell Waltrip used to say, nose down, butt up. Late models look like that. This car is butt down. because it's all about downforce. If you take the spoiler off butt down, I don't know. Again, I'm not an engineer, but sounds like a recipe for something fun to me, and especially if they're racing the radar or trying to get stage points, or you're 1 point out of the cutoff and coming down to it. I'm ready for it, but give them something we don't know, and hopefully it's not a total crap show. So we'll see. We'll see. All right, so today we did New Hampshire. We talked about wet tires as well, and the Austin Hills situation, and briefly mentioned the schedule, and of course the Indy Freedom Car 250, Freedom 250. I mean the IndyCar Freedom 250. I'm gonna get my words right. Dan, I got to mention, especially for the veterans, you, a fellow member of a racing Hall of Fame, like some of the guys that raced that IROC race. What you think about old Jeff Gordo, 55 years old, out dueling Kurt Busch to win those?
No surprise to me.
At a Rick Hendricks personal museum, that number 24 IROC car.
Yep. No surprise to me at all, and no surprise on the win. No surprise. I'm in awe.
Hey, Devin is a younger guy who didn't necessarily see a lot of those guys race, because you had Bill Elliott in that race, your your younger brother Dan leading some laps in that IROC race number 1. They ran, for those that don't know this, but 7 or 8 drivers. They ran 2 races where they're basically told, don't race each other too super hard, but you're allowed to pass each other. Just please don't wreck. So it's like a vintage car race, but there's a little more competition, is the way I would describe it. And you had Jeff Gordon and Kurt Busch. You had Rusty Wallace, Bobby Labonte, Bill Elliott, Elio Castroneves, Tony Kanaan, and Tommy Kendall. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, but those are who I remember being in those races. Dev, does that mean much to you watching that, having not really grown up watching those guys? Or, I mean, was that cool? Was that like something that you'd want to see more of and see maybe come to some NASCAR races?
I thought that was a really cool thing that they're bringing IROC and all that back, and then having some of the old school drivers. I thought that was a really cool thing that they got to do in DC this weekend.
And those are from the IROC series, those cars. Like, for those who don't know, the True Value IROC series, look it up, where they had mostly NASCAR drivers on mostly NASCAR tracks with a few open wheelers and sports car standouts and dirt car standouts mixed in, and they would run these spec cars that were prepared by the IROC series, International Race of Champions. And
are you calling that a Gen 8 Cup car, a Gen 7 Cup car?
Yeah, that's kind of where that idea came from. But they were all.
Where that idea might have come from. I'm not saying, but looks fishy.
Yeah. Look similar, but yeah, that's where that was. The original ones. Now they're building new. It's not like the Superstar Racing Experience, where, that was what it was called, right? Superstar Race. Yeah, it's SRX. It's not like SRX where they were running those were new cars. These were actually the IROC cars, so they don't want to junk them all out there. But there were still a couple of wrecks. Tony Kanaan nosed in the wall a couple times. Tommy Kendall too. But I thought it was fun to see, no matter how fair or unfair or whose car was souped up more than the others. It was still fun to see. So congrats to Jeff Gordon.
I think it's kind of like watching wrestling at the arena.
The Incredible Hulk, Jeff Gordon. Yes. Now, fun weekend here as we looked in review, and we look ahead to Daytona. Let's get to final thoughts here. Dan, you got anything you want to put the cherry on top with?
Yeah, I would love to see a street race through Dollywood as kind of a memorial, a tribute to her.
Man, rest in peace, Dolly Parton. Not like a total shock, but you didn't know how bad a hell she was in. Suddenly she's gone, man. So, yeah, that was.
Let's see a street race somewhere up there around home up there and see what that would be like.
What is that, Gatlin? Is that Gatlinburg? Where's Dollywood at?
Dollywood is Pigeon Forge and, yeah.
Hey, either way, okay, street race in Dollywood. We'll take that. Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Okay. Devin, what about you, bud?
Shout out Team Penske for the momentum that they've had through these last about month of the season here. Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney going into victory lane. It seems like every other week. They're in victory lane. Ford's on a roll going into the chase.
That they are. And, can Ford continue? They used to be the toast of the super speedways, too, there. But I think it's going to be kind of more of a crapshoot here. Looking at it, too, I just need to look backwards a little bit to Daytona a year ago, because that was Ryan Blaney winning also, by the way. a thriller with several other guys looking to stamp their pass into the then playoffs. Hey, I want to end a little bit somber here. The racing community lost somebody else. The racing media community did. And I don't know if you guys knew Pete McCole. I wasn't close buddies with him or anything, but Pete McCole's a photographer and did some other media work. And he was good buddies with Brandon Reed. And Brandon Reed's from the Georgia racing community. He hosts a podcast now called Print the Legend, and worked for years in the racing community. And I saw a post from Brandon that Pete McCole had suddenly passed away, and literally they didn't know what happened to him. And I still don't think they know as I record this. But I got to spend a couple times with him at the racetrack down at AMS and Echo Park Speedway. And there was one time in particular, I called Brandon on Saturday when I saw the news about this, but in 2016, there was a hurricane, or what was left of one, that came through Charlotte, and I had just gotten up there on a Friday to help PA announce Charlotte Motor Speedway, and all of the Friday activities got wiped out. They said, no, there's no window. It's all green all day. And I just kind of, I don't know if I was on social media or someone texted me or what, but I met up with Amy Henderson from Front Stretch, who then was meeting up with Pete McCole and Brandon, and another lady named Camille. And all media members, right? And we all hung out, and we went to the Hendrick Museum that day. Amy and I were at Concord Mills. I think we went out to eat. It had like a big NASCAR field trip, a bunch of media people telling racing stories, most of which were true. And it was a great time, and Pete was a big part of that. So rest in peace to Pete. He was only in his 50s, died before his time. And the people that knew Pete, his family, and to Brandon and Amy and those that were close to him. Cheers. Another one lost out of the racing world. We've lost too many this year. Of course, any is too many. So thank you, everybody, for listening here. We look forward to recapping Daytona and then strapping up, suiting up, and getting ready for Darlington Labor Day weekend. Y'all be safe out there this weekend. Be sure we're on Apple, Spotify, GoPRN.com, and YouTube. If you know someone that likes racing and maybe needs to hear something new, be sure to share it with them. Big thanks to Devin for stepping up and doing the production work after these shows here, getting this published. That's the main thing, just publishing it. That still takes time, and we appreciate that. And to all of you, let us know what you think, and we will see you here next week. Devin, do you have something else to say? You look like you're about to shoot out of the cannon there. Okay. Well, for Devin Kupka and Dan Elliott and his clapping hands, I'm Doug Fireball Turnbull. God bless y'all. We'll talk to you after Daytona, and this has been the 5 to Go podcast.